So good morning, everybody. Welcome to this morning's fireside chat. I don't see the fire anywhere, but I can just imagine that we've got a fire here. I wanted to thank the Capital Club really for organizing this session, which is extremely timely and very important as Europe, and we can discuss whether it's just Europe or it's a global issue, faces really its biggest energy crisis for the last 50 years or so. And I think what's really critically important is that here on stage, you've got a representation of the 360-degree view. We have, obviously, from my perspective, as the CEO of Dana Gas, we have the oil and gas industry perspective. Cornelius, of course, comes from very much the opposite end of the spectrum, which is the renewable end of the spectrum. And appropriately, in between, we have our technology expert and supplier who's solving all of the problems that we are creating. So I think it's very, very timely and appropriate. So, Dietmar, the first question really I have is as I said, a link to the energy transition. And it's the Chevron CEO, Mike Wirth, suggested recently in an interview with the Financial Times that the global energy crisis was exacerbated by Western governments doubling down on climate policies that have made the energy markets more volatile, unpredictable, chaotic. He pointed out to some unintended consequences and the need for an honest conversation, which I think is hopefully what we'll have here this morning, about the scale of the energy challenge. And essentially what he was saying is that the conversation about energy in the developed world has skewed towards climate and has really underemphasized the importance of affordability and security. And his observation was that the fossil fuel industry still is what runs the world's energy system today. 80% of the world's energy supply still from fossil fuels. It's going to be part of the energy mix tomorrow, and it's going to be part of the energy mix in 20 years' time. So that's a very oil exec perspective. Do you subscribe to that, or do you think, do you have a different view?
Yeah, first of all, good morning to all of you. And also from my side, thank you to the Capital Club for organizing this event. And I'm really honored and humbled that I can be here today with you and share some perspectives. To your question, Patrick, yes, I share his view. I think it's reality at the moment that we are running in the world, when you look on a global scale, still on fossil fuels and oil and gas. And that will remain a time because we are building a new energy system, which is a renewable energy system. And the new energy system that we build is in a fast ramp up, and that definitely should be faster and faster. So we need to ramp up renewables, wind, solar, hydro, nuclear, whatever, depending on the countries where you are. But we also need to be realistic that there is a dependency on the systems that we have today. And we as a company also, as Siemens Energy, we always have said that gas will also be a transition fuel. So at the end of the day, we need to have reality in the expectations that we can do. To go for a system that changes overnight in 3 years or 5 years into a completely renewable, I think that's a dream that we can have, but it's maybe not realistic to do it. And we need to also look into the topic that there is an energy system that is built today that serves the needs of the world, of the citizens, of the industry, with an electricity system. We are also talking that we want to get rid completely of the CO2 in some industries, which needs additional energy that we need to generate by renewables. When you go, for example, in the transportation sector, and you want to build in the transportation sector also electricity, or you use hydrogen as a source for synthetic fuels, then you need to build additional capacity on top of the electricity system that we have today. So I believe it's a reality that we need to adapt, that we need to switch these two systems over time, and we cannot do it in a single event. So we really need to do that, and we need to have a good plan. And this is depending on in which region you are and in which part of the world you are. When you are going in the world, you see that there is a lot of countries that have, and a lot of citizens in countries that have not access to electricity. On a global scale, we talk about 800 million people that have not yet access to electricity. Here in the MENA region, we are talking about 50 million people. When you look to the countries like Yemen, Afghanistan, and others. So 50 million people have no access to electricity. We need to have an answer for them, what they are doing, And maybe an answer is that we build only renewable plants. But there is also maybe the immediate need that they use the resources which they have in their countries, and we maybe use also gas and other resources to build an energy system. And there's other countries where we are heavily engaged already. When you look, for example, here at the UAE, where we have, of course, a very stable energy system which is built today on gas and renewables, and there is a fast ramp-up of renewables. And I believe, and as a company, we also believe that this is the right way to do it. You need to have these systems in parallel, ramp them up. And we need to mitigate these dependencies that we have, of course, especially when you look to Europe, that we need to mitigate these dependencies so that we have the original sources of, for example, gas and whatever, that they are coming from different places. I mean, it was an error in Germany to really build an energy system that depends on one gas supplier coming from Russia. There was a reason why they did it. It was the super cheap energy, and it was the whole, some whole of the German economy was built on that cheap access to electricity. This is now very much endangered, and that shows that you need to diversify. That shows that you need to have an energy mix, and that you need to build your system based on an energy mix in order to have the energy security and also the affordability. Because what we see at the moment all over the world, but in particular in Europe and in Germany, that the affordability of the energy is not anymore given in a classical way. The prices are skyrocketing for all kinds of energies, and in particular also for electricity. So we will see the next years a lot of challenges ahead of us to transform these energy systems, but we will also see with that a lot of opportunities, because once we have it now clear in front of us, and mankind was always able to act, we start to act now. And I think there is a lot of movement now in many places that we do the necessary actions to mitigate this problem that we have.
Thank you. May I just follow up, and then I'll pass to Cornelius. Obviously, as a gas person and a believer in the energy transition and a believer in the necessity of decarbonizing our energy systems, a believer that we need to ramp up renewables as quickly as possible, but at the same time, addressing the intermittency issues of renewable energy. Obviously, as a gas person, I see gas-powered electricity, and particularly, of course, gas turbines, as a perfect complement to renewable energy, in the sense that these systems can ramp up very, very quickly. Yeah. I think we were talking maybe in a question of hours. You can get a gas turbine back up and running and providing that infill capacity that you need when the sun doesn't shine or the wind doesn't blow.
It's actually in minutes.
In minutes.
So we have, in particular in the past, we knew that these systems will in the future have renewables in the system, wind and solar. And wind and solar are both fluctuating energy sources, so they will come and go, and you need then to stabilize the grid. That is in big grid systems. When you look, for example, like a European grid, which is interconnected, that's much easier because you have a lot of big power stations which have rotating equipment, rotating masses, which is stabilizing the grid. When you go now to smaller places where you build now, for example, only renewables or mainly renewables, then you have to have somewhere these spinning reserves and this rotating masses that are stabilizing the grid. Or you need to do something else. And that is something which is also sometimes underestimated, that you need to build also a grid system, and that you need to have gas turbines that are able to ramp up fast. And our gas turbines, for example, we particularly developed that they ramp in within 10, 15, 20 minutes from zero to full capacity to mitigate this intermittences that we see in the grid. And that is important, because people look on the energy generation and what is the energy source? Is it renewable or is it gas or whatever? But you also need to look on your grid, because otherwise your grid gets soon dark because it shuts down. And it's very complicated. That's also an important fact. I learned that recently. Here in the UAE, in Dubai, for example, I think we have one of the lowest downtime of the electricity systems. It's maybe below a minute or whatever that you have shutdowns of the system. In Europe, in Germany, it was the same. Having now more renewable resources in the grid, when such a grid breakdown happens, to restart the grid is an intense effort. It's much, much more complicated than in the past, when you had some big power stations and you ramped them all up. You had a plan how to do that, and then the grid system was running again. Today, with all these intermittent resources on rooftops, windmills that are standing around, power plants, big ones and small ones, biogas plants and whatever. So you have a huge system that you have to balance and that you have to ramp up. And that is a complicated effort, and it's an art and a science in itself. And that's something we also have to have in mind. Besides that gas turbines can help us to mitigate the problem, that also the grid is an intensive part of the whole equation.
Yeah, well, good morning, everybody, as well, and thanks to Capital Club. I think this is a perfect combination here to have a good and exciting discussion for all of us. Dietmar, let me ask you this. I think we are living really interesting times. The German Minister of Economic Affairs and Climate Change was here in March. Our Chancellor was actually here just a few weeks back, and the region was traditionally catering more to the east, obviously, for mainly fossil fuels. But an agreement has been signed now with Germany for LNG, but as well on offshore wind. So wouldn't this be really an opportunity, maybe a historic opportunity for Europe now, to set up a closer partnership with the region, both maybe starting a little bit to help on the acute energy crisis, as Patrick mentioned, to solve, but also long-term on low-emission energy to cater to Europe with low-emission energy?
Absolutely. I mean, I'm living 15 years here in the UAE, and I was wondering all the time, while there is no more cooperation between the UAE, but also other countries in the GCC and Europe and Germany in exchanging energy and energy sources. But the given fact was that we had this cheap energy from Russia, which was superseding everything here. And now I think the thinking is starting directly into diversification of that. And it's an historic opportunity for both. It's an historic opportunity for Europe and Germany to build new ties with this region, which has abundance of renewable energy. But it also gives a chance here to diversify from the Eastern world into Europe and more in the other direction. And I see it as a huge opportunity to build the plants up for that, to build the capacity for that. And it's a good sign. And what happened with this shipment of LNG that is now on the way to Germany and will arrive there in December, it's a first good sign. But we also have to see that this is a drop in the ocean. I mean, to give you the facts, this LNG shipment that goes now to Germany caters for one morning from 8 to 1 o'clock for the energy needs that we have in Germany. So it's a 6 hours or 7 hours usage time that we can have for that LNG. I'm not saying that we shouldn't do it. I'm saying there is a lot more that we need to do. There's a lot of more business opportunity behind that in order to make that happen. So it's a good start, and it's also, and I'm proud of that, it's the first shipment to the LNG terminal that they have ramped up now very fast in Germany. And it will be the first shipment that goes through that terminal. So it will be the first usage. It's very good.
That's an interesting one. And how can larger quantities of energy be exchanged in the future? It's a bit of a challenge on infrastructure as well, isn't it?
It's a bit of a challenge on the infrastructure. It is the shipping capacity. I think we need to evaluate how many LNG ships are available. But what we see also is that the countries here in the GCC are ramping up their capacity. Look at the UAE itself, where we are here at the moment. They are building up LNG capacity. We see it in Qatar. They are multiplying their capacity at the moment with the North Field expansion by 1.7, 1.8. So there's new ways to do it, and a new capacity that is coming in the market, and other countries do as well. So there is the LNG capacity will go up. And when I look in the forecasts for the next 10 years, what is the need for LNG and what is the capacity that we can deliver? We still see a gap that there is more need than capacity is available, even with all these ramp-up plans that are now in place. On top of that comes green hydrogen and other stuff that we maybe also discuss throughout in this session, which also needs to be shipped, and we need to find also the ways to build up capacity for that.
Maybe Egypt can come in.
Yeah, so Dietmar, this region, the wider region, is doubly blessed, not only with hydrocarbon resources, but also, of course, high solar intensity. In the case of Egypt, of course, there's also a lot of wind capacity. So, it is doubly blessed in that sense. But there is, of course, a mismatch between where the energy is currently consumed and needed, which is in the industrialized north, and where the cheapest, most available sources of renewable energy are available, which is in this part of the world. What is the most realistic way of matching those supply-demand? Because shipping green molecules, either in the form of electricity or in the form of other intermittent or intermediate products, hydrogen, green ammonia, green methanol, it creates significant problems. So what are the solutions to get the green energy from where it can be most cost-effectively produced to where it is consumed? And what are the potential consequences long-term for the industrialized north with respect to what appears to be, even with green energy, a period of expensive energy supplies going forward?
The consequences, let's start with that part, can be severe if Europe, and also in particular Germany, which is a country that has been built on industrial capacity that was always also in heavy energy intense industries like chemical, like glass, like automotive, steel, and all these stuff. We have a dependency on cheap energy. If that is gone, and we see that at the moment, there's a big debate from the industry with the government at the moment in Germany ongoing. If we don't find a way how to diversify that and bring the cost down for energy, we will see for sure some migration into other places because the industry has to go where the cheap energy is. That's also the reason why here in the UAE some heavy energy intensive industries are located here, because there is access to cheap energy and electricity. And that is what will happen. So the name of the game for Europe, and in particular for Germany, is to find ways to get access to cost competitive electricity and energy. And if that's not happening, then we see this migration. And now talking about that we have abundance of energy, especially renewable here in the region. Yes, we also need to develop the shipment of this energy to Europe. There's again now links that are built to Europe with ammonia, methanol, and whatever that will be shipped to the places here. But we have to see how this will balance over the time, and we have to see also how these plans will work out, because there will be a massive transport then in the direction of Europe. Or will it be that the industry will come to a place where it's closer to the source of the energy? So I can't answer it ultimately. If I would have the answer to that, I maybe would not sit here. But I see the problems, I see the challenges, I also see the opportunities. There's a lot of opportunities again into that here if you find the right solutions for that. But the criticality is the access to affordable, let's say affordable, not cheap, affordable energy.
And in terms of shipping, what is the most, in your view, what is the most likely cost-effective way of moving green energy from the places where it's produced to where it needs to be consumed? Because there's hydrogen liquefaction point minus 253 degrees centigrade by comparison to LNG, which is 167. So, I mean, there's another 100 degrees centigrade to cool hydrogen, which is in itself highly energy consumptive.
Hydrogen, I don't see that we will hydrogen in pure form ship today if we have no other methods than what we have today from the technology perspective. So it will be methanol, ammonia, and these kind of things that we will be transporting. And there we have also capacity available in the industry. There are ships and there are the methods are available. To ship hydrogen, there is no fleet, there is no massive technology deployment done yet on that.
What about pipelines?
Yeah, pipelines you can also do, of course. We checked also on what is available here from the Middle East, and there's very rarely also that you can go from the Middle East straight to Europe with a pipeline. There is some in the Stan states which you can use, repurpose also for doing that. So you need to build also new capacity on pipelines. That is definitely a way to do it here. But it also, and we have seen when such pipelines are built, it takes also a certain amount of time to do that. But pipelines is definitely a way to do it.
So here in the Western Mediterranean, we have quite a few going from Algeria to Morocco to Spain or via Tunisia to Italy. So we need an Eastern Mediterranean hydrogen pipeline maybe.
Yeah, I agree.
That's a good point. The politics probably need to come in. let's maybe go a little bit back in time. So in 2009, Siemens Energy, well, Siemens at the time was a founder of DI. We published more than 10 years ago this famous study on Desert Power 2050, where we modeled a new future energy system between Europe, the Middle East, and North Africa, running almost entirely on renewables. At the time, actually showing that this would have been economically convenient. I think the cost of solar came down by 90% over the last 2 decades. Cost of onshore wind probably by something like close to 60%. Well, energy security at the time has been actually a point of concern 10 years ago. Now, obviously, the crisis is there. But the development came much faster, because who would have expected that we had 1 to 2 cents solar, 1.5, 3 cent wind? This is quite, I think, exciting. Not even for 2050 we would have expected this. So the question is, what can we expect for the next few years for this decade, when we go from 1 terawatt solar to probably 10 terawatt plus, and from an explosion in anticipated wind capacity as well? How do you see the development in this decade, Dietmar?
I think Desertec was definitely the right movement. It was at that time early. There were also things associated to it. When you build an energy system and you rely then on a country which was at that time, many countries were also not stable, in the sense of that you could rely on, I get my electricity also, and also the countries asked, what is in for me? I have a solar field here and I transport energy to Europe, but what is in for me? So I think now with these new things that we are doing, when we bring hydrogen and ammonia and methanol, e-fuels and whatever in place, there's also something in for the country. There's also helping to build their electricity system. And I think there we have, and Desertec has developed further, that now also the country has a certain value add, and it's not just a provider of cheap energy to some other place here, which was maybe looked also negative from the countries that would be the hosts of the plant. Still, the infrastructure that has to be developed in terms of capacity, either HVDC lines, high voltage direct current lines, or pipelines or whatever needs to be built. So there is things on that on the way to get that operational, and I believe this will have a good future. I believe this is the future that the North African countries and Egypt and alike, that they will connect to Europe, and there will be an electricity supply and ammonia, methanol, LNG supply to Europe.
It's good. That would make Egypt kind of a trading hub for green electrons and molecules in the northeastern Mediterranean and southeastern Mediterranean, or northeastern Africa, if you can say.
I mean, Egypt is key in that here. Egypt is a huge country. Egypt has a huge population. It's also not an easy place at the moment. I mean, economically, they are at the moment in the critical status. They have built an energy system in the last years, which is built on gas plus renewables. We have done there years ago. We have done 2015. We have done the so-called mega projects, Egypt mega projects. That was a massive step for Egypt to get rid of old inefficient plants and to have access to very high efficient gas-fired power stations. On the same time, they discovered gas in the Mediterranean Sea, so they had a supply, and they saved a lot of money because they had to import the gas from the neighboring countries. That was more than $1 billion a year, or more than $2 billion a year that they saved. So at the end of the day, it was really something which helped the country to develop and to build a large infrastructure. Now the country is again going for infrastructure projects like mobility and ramping up the industry. But it's a massive investment, and Egypt also has not unlimited resources in terms of financial resources. So I think the region has stepped up already to help Egypt to do so, and I think that needs to continue also to develop this kind of businesses and to keep Egypt stable first, but also to make this as a hub so that they can bring energy to Europe. And the neighboring countries can also participate by that, because they can, if you have a more integrated grid, a more integrated energy system, they can also do it through Egypt, because not all the countries have access to the Mediterranean Sea.
And Egypt-Saudi is also scheduled, I think it's a 3 gigawatt HVDC connection, right?
Yeah, that was a project. I remember that very well. I discussed it at that time, 2010 or 2011. I discussed it with Dr. Al-Awaji, the deputy electricity minister at that time. And I said to him, why don't you do this project? And at that time, they were the thinking was not that far of this integrating grid things here. But he saw the point that Egypt has a different peak than Saudi and whatever. And Saudi had, of course, energy available when Egypt required it here. And finally, after several years, they also did it, and now the project is in implementation. And we see many more of these projects in the region happening, so that the grid systems across the GCC and neighboring countries are now getting more integrated. And I think that's rightfully so. That's right to do so. A big pole of stability, as we discussed earlier, in Europe is that we have this integrated grid and that each country can help each other with supply of electricity. So building now this grid here in the GCC and on a bigger scale, I think is the right thing. And it also creates opportunities to sell electricity or to buy electricity from a neighboring country.
Yeah.
So Dietmar, I was in Egypt in 2012, 2013, an interesting time, obviously, politically, but also I remember at the time, we struggled with very intermittent supplies of electricity and rolling blackouts, and the project that you described was incredibly successful. What were the critical success factors, do you think, that made that project so successful? And I'm now thinking, and certainly when I go back to Egypt these days, we don't see any of those problems that we had previously. And is there applicability elsewhere? I'm thinking, of course, in this context about Iraq, where they are flaring up 1.5 BCF of gas a day, which makes Iraq the second largest polluting country after Russia in the world. Can you replicate that success in Egypt, in Iraq? And if so, what, again, are the critical things that need to happen and to go right in order to make a project like that work?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this question was also internally in Siemens and Siemens Energy asked, how can we replicate that? Because there were some special success factors also in Egypt. There was at that time the will of a leader, President Sisi, to build an infrastructure in the country that is a game changer for the country, because they knew. And I was very often in Egypt with the former electricity minister and all the guys. They knew they have a very vulnerable electricity system, but nobody was able to take a bold decision. They were stuck in their government processes and whatever. And when Sisi took over, he saw that he needs to change this electricity system. That's a key to build an industry and to build a more resilient Egypt in the economy. And he was bold enough to take this decision. And he could do that because he was in a transitional government at that time. So there was not a formal elected parliament. He was in power and he made these bold decisions that he says, I do this now. He made it also on an economically very sound base. They knew that they had one of the best deals in the power plant world at that time. And he made the decision, we built the power stations in a record time, and the success we have seen. Is this replicable? I hope so. We tried it also in Egypt, in Iraq, and you named the country. And in Iraq, we developed a roadmap with them, and some of these things that we have developed in the roadmap are in the execution. What makes the difference? You need also decisiveness in the leadership. And that is what I see, for example, here in UAE. We have a decisive and educated will to bring the things forward. That is what I see in other countries. And in some places, this is not happening, and therefore, especially when you have a very inefficient system, the decisions are not taken. You mentioned the flaring. We have the concepts ready. We have the plants designed, how to get rid of the flares and how to use the gas that at the moment is polluting the world. But nobody is willing, and even the financing we had ready for it, but nobody is willing to give the permission to do it here. And that's the problem. And look at Iraq. They have at the moment, with the oil price that is given at the moment, they have maybe 100 billion in cash available, which they can deploy tomorrow. And what they need to do for their electricity system is by far not costing this amount. But you need a decisive leader that is doing it. You need a decisive leader to do it, or a leadership. It must not be only one leader, it can also be a parliament or whoever.
Yeah, well, I'd love to come back to the topic of electrical interconnections.
Good.
That's actually one of our favorites. We did all these studies on how to connect North Africa, Europe, Middle East, which was an integral part of Desert Power 2050. But we did a few other studies you might have heard about with the GCC Interconnection Authority on how to connect Fujairah to India, for example, with a subsea cable. We're actually currently working on power trading between Oman and UAE. So Oman has been the first country to introduce spot market, has been, well, a challenging one, let's say, but the key challenge is probably to go towards a more market-oriented model, because having the CEO of the GCC Interconnection Authority on our board, we know very well that the technical capacity of the GCC power grid, the backbone, is actually massively underutilized, only 10 to 20%. So the question is, Dietmar, how do you see the development on reinforcing, on boosting interconnections, but also using them more and going more towards a market kind of model?
Technically, you are absolutely right. It's underutilized, but we also need to build new connections amongst countries. So we need to build it more integrated. And I'm fully citing your view that we need to come to market models. I said it earlier. This is an opportunity, this grid, to trade energy amongst partners. So you can buy electricity when you need it in the peak, while another has at the moment no demand in his own country, so the country can sell it to the neighboring country or to a partner in participating in the grid. So that's a huge opportunity. I think to have such an integrated market here along the GCC grid, I think that would be a perfect thing, and that is, I think, something that should happen, in my opinion. It's something where the countries need to sit together and develop the mechanisms for that, and that would be a good opportunity for everybody.
And maybe also not to trade only physical electrons, physical molecules, but maybe virtual trade, which has boosted, like with green certificates, markets in Europe. What do you think about this?
Yeah, I agree. Also, green certificates are a mechanism, but on the long run, I think we need to have also this electricity then available at the sites. I mean, green certificates is, in my opinion, at the moment something that helps us to mitigate till we have the more renewable system available. So, and that's a good mechanism, nothing wrong with that. Our company, for example, we discussed it also in the pre-round here. Our company, we have said we want to be 2023 with all our global office buildings and factories. We want to be on renewable energy. On some of our factories, on some of our own buildings, we build then rooftop solar and stuff so that we can supply ourselves and batteries. On some others, like here in the UAE, for example, in the buildings, we are buying green certificates. But it's a mechanism that is a trade at the moment. It's not I'm fully on renewables. I rely on some certificate, but I'm not relying on real renewable, which I have available at my site.
Yeah.
So coming back to this idea of energy dependency or independency and security of supply. So famously, Ursula von der Leyen said in response to, of course, the overdependence on Russian gas supplies, that Europe needs to wean itself off that dependency and therefore build out more renewables faster. Anyway, we need to do that. But in terms of the dependency, how do you see that in the context of the fact that 80% of Europe's renewable energy sources, particular solar PVs, but it also, I think, applies to wind power generation as well, comes from China? Have we got ourselves out of the frying pan into the fire?
In solar, it's according to the statistics that we have in the company, it's more than 90% of the solar supply of the panels and the supply chain of the solar panels comes out of China. So there is a huge dependency. God forbid that we get another problem now with China. When you follow the news, you can see a lot that is going on there as we speak. So if that would happen and that tie would be cut, then the Western world, maybe not here, but the Western world, Europe and whatever, if there would be further sanctions, we would be in a huge problem, because the supply of solar panels from Europe itself is nothing. The other supplier that is only there is in the US, First Solar, and then we are done. On a large scale. I mean, you always find maybe here and there some supplier, but on a large scale, so that you can say, I do this massive deployment of technology. On wind, it's different. And we as a company, we have Siemens Gamesa, which is offshore, the leader in the industry. we have huge problems in onshore, like other wind companies. Not in permitting, in terms of as a company, because there has been a price war that is ruining the industry, and there is appeals also at the moment to the European community to make sure that a European supply can be guaranteed, because at the end of the day, Vestas, Siemens Gamesa, and all the European suppliers, they are losing money in that market. And that is dangerous. Of course, if there's a subsidized Chinese company coming now and say, I sell my turbines, of course, at one point of time, the others will be dead, and the supply comes then from China. And then again, the dependency is there. So there is also a bit of industrial politics and geopolitical view in that, how we secure some industries in some places. And if we learned one thing in this energy crisis that we are in now, is that you need to diversify. So you need to have suppliers that are also coming from Europe. You need suppliers that are maybe here in the Middle East, and you need suppliers also from China. Nothing against Chinese supply. But if you are depending on one, you are, and that's the massive message from Russia, Germany, you are dead, or nearly.
So in terms of how does Europe, and for that matter North America, protect itself from that kind of predatory pricing policy? Do you think that in the case of Europe, that the carbon border adjustment tax will play a role? In the case of the United States, how important do you think the Inflation Reduction Act is going to be in order to onshore some of these technologies and ensure the survivability of these technologies?
I'm not an expert on the US, but when I talk to my colleagues, they are telling me that this is a massive way to get away from this dependency, and it's I think a good thing that we see in the US. And the US had also a clear stand that they want to protect their industry to a certain extent, so that they are stable also on themselves. I mean, the US can supply themselves with energy. They are not relying on any other country, and they are also building now massively up renewables and do, I think, when you look on a global scale, the right things. Europe definitely has with the border tax a mechanism in hand which can help to enable also that investments in Europe come again, and that we also start to rebuild certain industries in order to diversify and have the capability also to supply themselves with technology which they need, and not depend only on one or two countries. So I see these mechanisms as viable, and I think the EU is definitely heading in the direction that they see that they need to mitigate now these dependencies.
Yeah, well, Siemens Gamesa, as you mentioned, Dietmar, is the global leader in offshore wind. Onshore has challenges. I find it very interesting because I think you're the only wind turbine manufacturer that has a production plant in MENA. I think the one in Tanger for the wind blades. Could you elaborate a little bit more? I think we saw similar price increases for turnkey wind power plants than solar power plants. So that created similar kind of issues due to raw material prices, supply chain issues, logistic costs. How do you see the development for next few years on wind, which is certainly, as you outlined, more diversified globally and not concentrated in one country?
I mean, wind has definitely a great potential. I mean, there's a good reason why Siemens Energy has a company that is generating wind turbines. It's one of the biggest growing markets in the renewable industry. We are, by the way, at the moment, we have made an offer to buy the remainder shareholders shares from Siemens Gamesa back. That's at the moment with the Spanish authorities in the stock exchange discussed. Once they give their release, then we made a 4 billion offer to buy the stakes. Then we will integrate Siemens Gamesa back into Siemens Energy as a company. And why we are doing that, because we believe that this market is very viable for the next decades, and it will help to make this energy transition happening. And we also believe that there need to be, and that's also what the politicians see, that you need to have European suppliers on the ground to do so. Having said that, we are a globally acting company. Of course, we are looking also into investments into other regions where we have the possibility then to make a difference with local value add, create something for the country, but also get a benefit out of that when we create a factory or when we create possibilities in a country, that we get business out of that. So we are very eager, looking forward to continue our journey in wind. We believe it's a huge market. It's 1,000% till 2030 how the wind market will be growing, if I remember the global number correctly. So it's a huge growing market, and similar things happen with solar. Solar is not as easy. Wind is not easy, but solar is more complicated because the dependency is completely, as I said earlier, on China, and also the supply chain, silicon, ingots, wafers, everything is in China. My old company, Siemens, now we are Siemens Energy, we are just completely independent. We developed the wafer technology, Wacker Chemie took it. All these things have been done in Europe, but now everything is completely in China. And that shows also the world that you need to protect your IP, that you need to protect the things that you are doing, and it's important that you have an eye on this. It's not happening by itself.
This brings us maybe to the electrolyzer industry.
Yeah. So, I mean, I'd just like to get a sense of the scale, Dietmar. I mean, what hydrogen has been touted, particularly in the in the European Union renew policy in terms of energy diversification and with a focus on renewable energy, and hydrogen, green hydrogen, plays a very central role in that. Can you talk to us about some of the challenges and the issues about moving to a green hydrogen future, particularly in the context of Europe, and get a sense of scale? You know, what does an electrolyzer look like? I mean, is it as big as this room? Is it as big as the table? I mean, give us a sense of scale of this technology.
Very good. So first of all, I think green hydrogen is definitely can be a game changer in the future if we apply the technology. It is already in the region. It has its feet in the ground. Looking at Saudi Arabia, in Neom, where there is a big plant built by ThyssenKrupp, by our competition. When you look at the hydrolyzer, and they ramp it up. We have here in Dubai, we have the one and only hydrolyzer running in the Middle East and Africa that is producing hydrogen. That's a plant that we built up for the expo to showcase how it works, exactly for the purpose that you said. How big is it and what does it mean? What we are doing there, we have a 1.2 megawatt hydrolyzer, which is producing 20 kilograms of hydrogen per hour. And we store that in a tank. And then in the night, when the sun is not shining anymore, the solar supply comes from the Mohammed bin Rashid Solar Park. In the night, we use the hydrogen and burn it again in a gas motor to generate electricity. So it's a closed system at the moment, but it's a showcase. So it's not an industrial scale one. But to give you a magnitude of how big the hydrolyzer is, you fit the hydrolyzer, you can fit maybe in this room here, where we are sitting, half of that room would be the hydrolyzer, 1.2 megawatt. And then you have, of course, some supporting systems, and then you have a tank. And the tank takes the 20 kilograms per hour for 8 or 10 operating hours per day. So the tank would be maybe from that side to where the table is there, and that's then the tank. So you can see it here. It's a demonstration plant. If you are interested, we can organize also some visit there. We have videos available on our website where you see the magnitude. So what I wanted to say, 1.2 megawatt. That's the size. Of course, now the industrialization goes further. 20 megawatt are the sizes of the things, and we are working on bigger ones. And the technology will scale up, but there will also be some massive space demand for building such plants. So it's not that you fit them in a small place. So you need to generate the hydrogen, and then you need to store the hydrogen, and the hydrogen storage is on high pressure, of course, in tanks. So you also need a huge storage capacity then to do that. And then you have the reforming plants. We are building, for example, in Chile. We built with Porsche and Exxon together a plant which is generating out of wind energy, hydrolyzer. Then we have a plant that processes it and makes methanol out of it. And then we have, in the latest refining stage, we have then a synthetic fuel that can be used in combustion engines in cars. So completely green fuel. And Porsche uses that for decarbonization for the decarbonization of their whole company. And that plant is now in a demonstration. It's also a 1 megawatt, and it will be ramped up, and we will be 27, 28. We will have a plant there which produces 550 million tons of synthetic fuel then per year, which will be shipped then to different countries, to Europe and other places where we need them with tankers. So the scale is massive that is happening there. And of course, and we are continuously developing also the hydrolyzer technology like our competition. And in several occasions, I have sit with my colleagues from the other electrolyzer companies together in a panel, and we were all in sync in our belief that at the moment, none of us is able to fulfill the demand of the hydrolyzer capacity that is required in the future. We need to work this in partnership out in the industry. There is no Siemens Energy, no Thyssen, no whatever their names are that can supply the whole world with hydrogen. We have to work together to do that and to make this transition also with hydrogen happen.
There's a huge challenge, Dietmar, isn't there, with respect to decarbonizing the hard-to-abate sectors such as glass, cement, steel, fertilizers, and so forth. And hydrogen has been touted as a solution to that. But there is a huge challenge in the sense that in order to decarbonize those industries, essentially we will have to double the current installed capacity of power generation in the world, exclusively through renewables. How do you see that happening and over what kind of time frame? And is it even realistic?
For sure, it's realistic. I think the world will go in that direction. But the sheer magnitude that you outlined, when we have to double the electricity system, the new electricity system is completely renewable. We have the old one still to transition into renewable. So that will take time. I mean, look at the industrial capacity that is available at the moment. So that will take 2-3 decades to do so. It is in a good case and in the best case here. It's not something that will happen like we discussed also with a switch and you say, I do it now. We have done a study, for example, on steel. If you want to decarbonize the steel industry, and we said, let's decarbonize 25% of the steel industry on a global scale. What electricity do we need? Then we need 250 gigawatt of electricity, renewable electricity available. What does 250
that's
mean?
Germany's power generation.
That is German's power generation.
Right.
German complete power generation that is today accessible is 250 gigawatts. So we need to build an electricity system like that again, just for 25% of steel. And we have not touched aluminium. We have not touched other industries, glass and cement and whatever you said. So the magnitude is big. And also these topics come then up, which I said earlier, with the stabilization of the grid and whatever. So there is a huge technology deployment that we need to do in the next decades to come. And we need to face reality that this will happen only over time. It is not possible to do that in 3 years. It is not possible. Do
you have concerns about supply of critically essential metals? I'm thinking about copper. I think with these huge ambitions of renewable move towards the electrification of everything. The supply of copper, I think, if I understood correctly, in order to provide the copper needs for the future, we're going to have to build 5 world-scale copper mines every year for the next 20 years. There's been 1 world-scale copper mine developed in the last 20 years.
Yeah.
So, is there a mismatch between the needs for this energy transition to the green future and our capacity to supply the metals necessary to support it?
I agree, because that's exactly why we say this needs time. This will not happen overnight. And one of the biggest copper mines in the world, by the way, is in Russia, which is currently under sanction. So, at least from the Western world. So, let's say this is the reality that we are in, and therefore you need to work with the resources that you have. You can think about, I do all this here, and technically on a white sheet of paper, when you put some boxes, it all works. But when you go into the reality, you look into your supply chains, you look where's the supply coming from, then you find out the reality, and then you know that you can only do one after the other, and that you can't do everything in parallel. Or we find another trick to do it, which we still have to look for.
Right. Yeah, I think the reality check topic is an important one. If you look at the official targets and the vision of Europe on hydrogen, maybe just to repeat the numbers, actually in 2020 we proposed the 2 times 40 gigawatt initiative, which became part of the European hydrogen strategy, which has been expanded to a 2 times 160 gigawatt initiative with the hydrogen accelerator this March. So that's the official targets of Europe, 2 times 160 gigawatt capacity, well, which may vary more or less, but we are speaking about 10 million tons in Europe and 10 million tons of imports by 2030. So there's a huge challenge probably. And how do you see, let's say, the gap between these ambitions, the 10 million tons to be produced domestically in 8 years from now, the 10 million tons to be imported to Europe, and on manufacturing capacity being one of the leaders as an electrolyzer manufacturer, and probably also on regulation, on certification to implement concrete projects?
I think the politics is on the way to help. The politics identified these problems. Of course, we talk also to them, our competition or our partners in that industries, let's say it this way, they are also talking to them, and I think the politics start to understand that there is a need for action. We as a company, we have announced just recently that we will build a gigafactory in Germany where we produce hydrolyzers. But given the magnitude of the projects that are at the moment discussed and which came up just the last few months, this capacity of this factory will be sucked up immediately. Look at ThyssenKrupp, the factory capacity they have is practically for the next 2-3 years in Eon. So there is a lot of things where we need to think, how do we industrialize that further? How do we build this capacity? And this needs to go in sync with the demand in the countries. Many countries also come and say, why don't we localize here and build a factory in the UAE or somewhere else? Then we need to have a local demand also here, because there is a heavy competition. There is Oman, there is Saudi, there is Egypt. Everybody wants to build that. And we need to create also a local demand where somebody says, hey, I buy here these hydrolyzers and these technologies. And there also the politics plays a role with the different hydrogen strategies that we see in the different countries or regions.
Yeah, well, with the UAE, they published a roadmap for COP26, and now the hydrogen strategy, actually with our partner Fraunhofer, is being worked out. Abu Dhabi is due to announce, I think, regulation and more the local part of the hydrogen strategy. How do you see this going forward also towards COP28 in the country next year?
Yeah, I mean, we have here in the region, we have some countries which have the luxury situation that they have wind and solar together. That's Saudi Arabia, that's Oman, that's Egypt. To name some of them, there's more, but they have the bigger sites at the moment, which are seen already, and they have a big chance in that in the future. And I'm pretty sure that these countries will show also COP27, COP28 what they can do and what is possible. So we need these lighthouse projects in this region. We need the projects in these countries that we are really showing off how this can be done, and we need real projects. And most of the projects in the hydrogen arena are at the end of the day not realized because there is no off-taker. And why is there no off-taker? Because then the economics come in play, and then the companies are saying, hey, it is still not economically viable. I have no buyer for my products. So what we need to do, and what we have found now, there is a strategic element, which is companies like Porsche, which I said, they invest into this plant in Latin America to decarbonize the company, because they said we want to be decarbonized at a certain point of time in the future. And for them, it's strategic to do so. Otherwise, they will not survive in their industry if they are not decarbonizing.
Maybe shipping industry.
Sorry?
The shipping industry.
I wanted to come to that. And other industries like shipping industry, they do the same. They say, we want to decarbonize till 2040, and we need to find a way to get from these heavy polluting ships that are shipping around the goods at the moment on the world sea from A to B. We need to get rid of that, and we need to decarbonize ourselves. So for them, it's a strategic element. But when you go into some other industries and you want to find the economics behind it, you will not find it. You have maybe in the chemical industry, we have some discussions. They have also customers which are willing to pay the on top amount that is required when you go to a greener piece. So that is something where each industry needs to think strategically through what is their place in the future. And I believe that the companies that will not go into a green future, they will have not a right to exist in the future. They will not find the customers anymore because the world needs to do this change. So I believe this is happening. And in the shipping industry, they calculated also what does it mean, for example, when you go now into heavy investments, and there is billions of dollars that you have to invest, for example, when you go to e-methanol. What does it mean for the banana that comes to your table, that comes from Brazil to Europe or to the Middle East here, and we eat it? And what does it really mean in price increase? And it's a fraction of nothing. It's a cent or 2 cents or whatever, or half a cent, depending on the product is and where it comes from. So at the end of the day, when you look at the end consumer, it's compared to what we see at the moment in inflation, it's a fraction. When you look on the investments that are required to do, for example, a decarbonization of a shipping company, of a logistics company, it's a massive multi-billion, hundreds of billions investment that you have to do. But at the end of the day, when you look at the product, it's a fraction, nothing.
So yeah. Bill Gates has talked about green premium. You know, people's willingness at the end of the day to pay more for the product. And I'm amused, not in a good way, by conversations about who ultimately is going to pay for it, because it seems to me that we know perfectly well who's ultimately going to pay for it. We are ultimately going to pay
the consumer, of course.
But I'm encouraged. I mean, what I'm hearing that there are companies now who are prepared to pay that green premium for having decarbonized products and using those decarbonized products in their industries and in their businesses.
There is we had this discussion with Arena recently, and we were sitting with Francesco Gamera, the Director General, and his team, and we said, why don't we form a decarbonization alliance? And the essence of this decarbonization alliance is, let's find movers and shakers that want to do something now. We have a lot of companies that say, I want to be decarbonized in 2050, 2060, which is good to have. But mankind, and we all maybe know ourselves, when you have such a target, you want to do it 2050, then you start maybe 2040 in the best case, and maybe 2045 to do it really. So therefore, I think it's important that we have companies that say, I do something now. And the matter of this decarbonization alliance, when we developed this idea, was to find these companies that want to do something now, and of course then in sequence over the next years and decade. And we discussed it. Francesco Gamera announced the topic in Bali at the G20 conference together with our board member Karim Amin, and we had a huge revival and companies that want to join us. In the meantime, we have 15 in the first glance that said we joined this company. They are from all over the world, from here, from the UAE, from the GCC, from Europe, from Latin America, North America, Asia. So we have a huge and global companies that are also participating there, and a huge demand of people that want to join the alliance. We will have now in COP27, we will have the first alliance meeting where the CEOs of the companies will come together, where we also then nail down what is every company doing to be traceable till COP28. What is the outcome? What have we done in the first year? So not talking, I decarbonize in 2030 and I have great plans, but what do we achieve in 1 year? What have you done for us as member of the club, but also for the other companies that are part of the club? What have we done to decarbonize, and what are the tangible results that we have?
So measured plans.
Measured plans, exactly. That's the idea behind, to have real plans and show the world we can do something. And it must not be, everything must not be big, but do something and show that, hey, this is what we can do. Because I think we need showcases from the companies, from organizations that say this is possible to do. Because everybody talks about it, but we need to act. We need to enact it. And that is maybe also the criticism that I have on COP in the past, that in the past there had been a lot of debates, there is a lot of talks, policies and things come out, but what has happened really, when you remember back Glasgow and you look now at COP27 in Egypt, what do you remember in your particular case, what has happened and what has changed? What do you have anything that you can say, hey, this I felt now that happened from COP27, from COP26 to COP27. And that is, I think, where we need to get more diligent as companies, as world community, as humans, that this is our problem. This is not a problem of somebody that will solve it for us. We are all human beings. We are living on this planet. There's only one planet that we have, and we need to do it now. If we don't, or at least we need to start now. If we wait for somebody doing it for us, it will not happen. And it's a matter of time. Either we waste our planet or we get it under control.
So you touched earlier, Dietmar, on the idea of energy poverty, 800 million people without access to electricity, women suffering particularly the consequences of burning biomass, animal dung, etc., for cooking and so on. It seems that the COP discussion has been a very Western-centric discussion. Do you think that the opportunity presented by COP 26 and 27, these COPs which will be not located in the developed world, but the developing world, will refocus some of that attention towards a more egalitarian energy future?
Yeah, and I fully see that this is maybe a good chance that we have with COP27 and also COP28 to make clear that we need to cater for the demands that are in specific places. I mean, when you are in Africa and you have no access to electricity, it doesn't help you if somebody in Europe tells you this is what you have to do. We don't need to be teachers. I think we need to find the ways that are operating in the different places, and we can learn from each other. That's for sure. But we shouldn't be there should not be directions. You have to do this or you have to do that. I think we have to cater for the needs of these countries and these regions, that they are doing the right things. And I believe that COP27, especially when I look in the preparation that we are doing for COP27, and I hear from my African colleagues also that this is a pledge that the African countries will do definitely at the COP27, that they say you also have to cater for our needs. We cannot only do what you are telling us. We have our own needs, we have our own roadmap, and that's what we anyway believe in, that a country needs to develop a roadmap for their needs. You cannot say what for the UAE is right in Saudi or in Yemen. It's different.
So Antonio Guterres, the UN Secretary General, has recently declared that Africa should not use its newly discovered gas resources for power generation, for example. But do you think that's a reasonable perspective to take?
It's not my judgment. I mean, there's government. I mean, if you have to build it on the resources that you have to available. And if you take the things that you have discussed the last 45 minutes and 1 hour, you have to diversify your energy system. And if you have an energy source in your country that you can use, then you better make a plan how to do it and diversify your energy system. If you say I can afford that, I rely on others around me that give me everything, and I'm sure that this works, then you do that. But once again, we had the example that we did it and in Germany, and it perfectly worked not out. So it's a perfect storm that we have at the moment in Germany and in the world, so somehow associated to that here. So I believe the countries need to develop a roadmap, and then they can say it makes sense that I use my gas resources. And gas is a transition fuel. We as a company say that. We discussed it also. You are on the same school of thought. Gas is a valuable energy source that we should use for the future. It helps us to make this energy transition real and happen, right, in my opinion. And in Germany or Europe also, and you said it, they have also gas resources. It's not that they are not having gas resources available on the continent. They have it on the continent. Even if they don't buy it from here or somewhere else, they have it on the continent. They can use it, but they are not using it.
So do you think there's too much emphasis on stopping the use of fossil fuel energy? Obviously, as a gas person, I think that one of the biggest contributions that we can make is to substitute gas for coal in terms of power generation. Coal, which generates about 20% of global greenhouse gas emissions, like 14-15%. But so do you think the emphasis is too much on stopping fossil fuels and not enough about decarbonizing fossil fuels? And are you, as Siemens, involved in the decarbonizing waste streams, for example, from the product of burning fossil fuels?
I mean, when you have today a coal-fired power plant and you replace it by a gas-fired power plant and you have gas available, I think it's a good thing to do. And when you look then 10, 15, 20 years ahead, you can also use the same gas-fired power station. You can burn hydrogen there. So it has a dual use. So it is not that your investment in your plant is gone after 5 years when somebody says, I have discovered something brand new. You can't do that with coal. With coal, it's not possible. So I think we need to look that we do it in phases again, phase out coal. We announced also that we phase out of coal. We are not supporting anymore the technology. We do services in the plants which customers are operating, but that's it. But we are not deploying new ones or doing things. And it's rightfully so, I believe. But when you look on gas, I believe gas has a possibility for today helping the scarcity of energy that we have in some places to mitigate that. And it has the possibility to be a green generation for the future when you use hydrogen and the likes to burn it in the gas turbines. And they are very efficient. I mean, the gas turbine technology is a very efficient technology to generate.
Is it now 50, 60%?
We are in 60 plus, 62, 63, 64%, depending on the climate conditions where we are. So it's really very efficient, and the theoretical maximum is 65 or 65 point something.
This is combined cycle.
This is combined cycle, yes. Yeah. So and the plants have, what I earlier said, the possibility to be ramped up very fast and very quick. So there's a good technology piece available. I believe this transition it needs to have not dogmatic thoughts behind it. It needs to have technical, realistic thoughts behind it. What can be done and what can be achieved over the time. If you do so, then we will come to a better energy system. We will solve our problems with CO2, and we will really help the world to get better. On the decarbonization question, Siemens has a lot of technologies. One is this efficiency in the gas turbines, but we are also looking on heat pumps, for example. So really how to use heat in process plants. There is many process plants all over the world which have an excess of heat that they are emitting. How can you make use of this heat? So we have now new technologies which we deploy, large-scale, industrial-scale heat pumps, which are capturing this heat, which we are using again to generate energy for the plant itself, or which we use for other purposes. So this helps to decarbonize also then industries here. So there's a lot of developments that we are doing. We are looking on to build a hydrogen test center here in the UAE potentially, where we test also hydrogen turbines in the future. How to make this happen? Today, there is technology that can burn 50, 60%, 70% of the gas of the gas can be hydrogen. In the future, we want to have all our turbines on 100%. So there is a lot of technology deployment. That's, by the way, something which we have done here in the UAE. We announced it last week that we have a cooperation with Abu Dhabi, and we will build one of our 4 innovation centers globally. We will build here in Abu Dhabi. So we have one in Orlando, one in Berlin, where our headquarters is. We have one here in Abu Dhabi and one in Shenzhen in China. And here in particular in Abu Dhabi, in the innovation center, we are looking on developing technologies for clean fuels, how to make grids more resilient, how to connect hydrogen into different sectors like transportation and the likes. So we are developing technology there. We have also partnerships with companies, which we will announce at ADIPEC, which are co-developing with us such technologies. And the idea is really to create intellectual property here in the country in order to also use it then on a regional and global space. And there is a lot of things to be done in the future. And we are looking for partners. So if here is some interest on that, we can also talk about that and look how we can work together in such an innovation center.
Hi, my name is Majid Al-Qasimi. I'm a founding partner of Soma Mater. We're a food security and sustainability consultancy. Thank you very much. Really enjoyed this, and Capital Club, super. The one voice that's not in the room is the government. And I wonder for everybody sat on that stage, Patrick, you've had a lot of time here in the gas industry, Dietmar also. I'd wonder between the three of you, what is it that we need as a society or these economies in this energy transition from the government side? Dietmar, you already indicated this decisiveness is critical, but where that's lacking, what do we need to do to be able to help governments either make decisions or enable the environment for that?
Great question. Can I put it first, Cornelius? I mean, in terms of the renewable energy aspect of it, what do you see as lacking, or what do you see as enabling in terms of getting a greater penetration of renewable energy? Obviously, Dubai is a leader, Abu Dhabi is a leader, but Northern Emirates not so much in terms of the move towards renewable energies. What do you think are the critical enabling roles of government to allow this to happen?
Well, I think it's a very good question. We need the ingredients we mentioned previously. So UAE is undoubtedly the leader here. They made it happen. They made a bold plan already more than 10 years ago. They upgraded the plan several times. We see today among the largest solar plants in the world here when you cycle on a Qudra. So I think there's great achievements. And now things happen for purely economically reasons, because renewables is by far outcompeting conventional generation. So I think it is about having a bold plan. The region is not lacking bold plans here, but is lacking execution. And Egypt, again, we discussed before, can be a model as well in having clear execution. So not only having the plans, but executing, creating a structure which has kind of a one-stop shop as well for developers, and then opening up with good policy multi-market segments, because it's not only about utility scale generation, it's the energy transition is moving towards democracy, creating markets, decentralizing as well. So it's a combination of things, and in this respect, again, Dubai showed how you can open up, for example, a segment for industrial commercial solar, which could be opened up more towards wheeling, for example, similar to Jordan, but it's about creating the policy to enable a multi-market segment development.
I believe governments can play maybe 2 or 3 roles in enhancing roles, in my opinion. One is creating new partnerships, and I come back to the example that we just touched earlier a bit. We had now 2 visits of German Chancellor and Vice Chancellor and Minister of Economy here in the country and in the region. And this is showing that there is new ties to be built. I know that the UAE delegation is going this week, end of the week, they are in Germany to announce also further things. I think that's important that we build these new partnerships. So governments can play an essential role that helps the industry also to have security that this is wanted and this is something that we want to do. So I think that's one element. The other thing is I think policies we are on the way in countries. What I miss a bit is that we have overarching policies which are going across regions or even on global policies. It needs to be the same so that we all adhere to the same rules. How do we bring energy from A to B? Is nuclear now green energy or not? Depending on in which country you are, there is different views. Let's say it this way. So these kind of things, I think we need more diligence on that, and that is clearly the governments and the regulators that play a role there. And then, of course, I would like to see the Middle East and the UAE and other countries. The governments have a lot of income at the moment, which can be used to make also lighthouse projects. I would like to see more engagement in that. When I look at Europe, when I look at Germany, there is a lot of funds available to fund projects which are new and which are deploying new technology. So they have the hydrogen funds and all the stuff, you know it. And I miss something like that here in the Middle East. Here, at the end of the day, we count the economics, which is rightfully so. I'm not saying we shouldn't look only on projects which are burning money, but we also need the first movers that are showcasing technologies, that are saying this is how we do it, and the government can play a role with their money in order to enable such projects, to have funds available to make the first move in projects into new technologies. And I think these are, from my point of view, at least 3 elements where I would like to see more government engagement.
My name is Karim from Diamond Developers in the Sustainable City. I have 2 quick questions. The first one is on energy intensity. We talked a lot about the carbon mix, and we need to diversify, etc. So my question is, many of us are on the receiving end of or have to report on ESG and greenhouse gas emissions, etc. So when electricity changes and varies so much, and that's part of the energy security, how do we track the carbon intensity of electricity coming to industry, developments, cities, etc.? That's my first question. My second question, our brains are really wired to produce more. You know, we always think we have to mobilize more energy, we have to produce more, etc. So my question is, are we doing enough to consume less? And I think, because that's going to really move the goalposts, right? You know, energy security is based on what you need today. What if I need less? Then I'm more energy secure. And my third question is on hydrogen. And I know that there's so much excitement about hydrogen, but I have to admit, I'm one of the ones, I'm still struggling with the metrics of hydrogen. So yes, whether it's pink or green or brown or blue, turquoise, whatever, turquoise, thank you. Ultimately, producing hydrogen is very energy intensive. And if I'm just shifting surplus electricity from my solar farms to power my hydrolyzer, I'm going to lose 30%, 35%. And then when I convert it back to electricity or gas, I'm going to lose another 30%. So how does that impact my levelized cost of electricity? And why are we so excited about hydrogen? I'm missing something here. Yes, you spoke about heat pumps, but is that the solution?
Yeah. The heat pump is maybe one of the solutions. It's not the ultimate solution, but it can help to solve one problem. I agree with you. We need to look, and that is what I tried to convey earlier, that we need to look, where do we apply hydrogen really? I showcased you also that you can use hydrogen in the future, for example, in gas turbines. Today, I would never do so because it's not the most economical way to do that, to generate with the solar power hydrogen and then burn it in the gas turbine again. I mean, rightfully what you said, you have a lot of losses in there. But we are developing in a new energy system and we need to look on these technologies. What we also do is we try to enhance, of course, the hydrolyzer technology and our competition as well, in terms of efficiency. So there is of course thinkings in our roadmaps and R&D in developments that we enhance the technology also in the future. And look back what he mentioned, it what a solar plant costed in 2006 or whatever when we had the first discussions with Mazda, and what is the price today. So there is deployment of technology, enhancement of efficiency and stuff, and that will come into play. So the hydrogen industry is at the beginning, it's infancy, I would say, of development. It's not in a mature state. It's not even a teen. It's in its infancy of development. So that is, I think, to the hydrogen. And it can be a game changer. Yes, maybe somebody comes up with something else, but at the moment, it's one element that we have in hand that can be a game changer for the future. And I think we, as a community, need to work on that. In terms of your second question, the first one was on how do we track what is in the ESG, what is the green part and what not. There is technology available that we are also, that is one of the things that we are doing at the moment in the innovation center, that we have a project there which is looking on how to track what is the CO2 footprint of a certain energy element, or what is the CO2 footprint on a barrel of oil that we sell somewhere. So, and how is the decrease of that over the time? So there's blockchain technology involved. So we have such technologies in the early development. And that is something that we need also, because you all, like we also as a company, have to submit our ESG reports, and they have to be traceable, audible, and they have to be secure. So from that side, we are working on such pieces of technology. And that's the technology piece that we have there. And the second question was about
energy efficiency.
Yeah.
How to consume less. Yeah. So I think that's on all of us. I mean, there is technology pieces again available that brings efficiency into certain systems. You can change technical systems to get more efficient. But you also need to start with yourself, how you do that. I mean, I was recently asked, how can we change consumer behavior? I mean, it starts with putting a price on electricity. When you pay more on electricity, you start to think, do I want that or not? When you fuel your car, I mean, now the prices in UAE went down again a bit on the fuel station, but there were people thinking maybe in summer when the big increase was, do I really want to pay this, and do I need a car that consumes 25 or 30 liters of gasoline per 100 kilometers, or can I go also from A to B with a car that consumes less? So it starts also with awareness of the individuals and the companies to save energy. We have constantly energy saving programs in our company ongoing, which we are using to reduce the electricity consumption. And in the meantime, that's a big factor. In the past, it was maybe not that big factor. In the meantime, it is on a global scale. And that's what we are doing. And of course, we are trying when you go then into the plants which are built for our customers, we look also what technologies can be deployed there. And this is then an individual assessment that we also do. How can you get more energy efficient there, and how can you save energy?
I think the cheapest form of energy is the energy you don't use.
Exactly.
So and I think that probably you were talking earlier about government policy. I think personally, not enough is being done, even in Europe, to emphasize the issue of energy efficiency. And of course, in Europe, there's a very old housing stock, and these houses were not built for the modern era, and there is a lot of energy leakage. And I think we just need to get a lot better at emphasizing that particular aspect, because it's going to be critical in order for us to be able to meet our 2050 goal.
smart systems can help a lot there, which are especially in buildings and when you are in your private rooms, but also in office rooms and whatever. Having smart technologies applied there, the lights are switching off automatically, aircon is going off. That is a huge saving that you can create with easy technology pieces. You don't need even to come to Siemens Energy. You can buy them at Amazon.
Energy efficiency is, I personally think, the best business case. Obviously, from a German perspective, it makes a lot of sense to, before even thinking on how to generate electricity or how to generate energy, to reduce the waste. But if you look at the business case, ESCO, this is the best business case here in the region as well. In Europe, as Patrick said, it's a wonderful business case. The challenge is often bankability. It's a very fragmented market. It's about creditworthiness as well with long-term ESCO contracts. But yeah, to a certain extent, probably it's where the government could do a little bit more here as well to help to push this market. There is objectives on energy efficiency here in UAE, for example. Saudi is currently enjoying a big boom on ESCO with Tashi, the super ESCO, but much more can be done, and it is a wonderful business case. I can encourage everybody to look at the opportunities for energy efficiency, and I see companies moving into this field now because, for example, solar has become very competitive, and there is much more money to be made in energy efficiency than in solar.
The war will end, hopefully, soon. Sooner than the better. Will it bring back the energy systems and the energy prices to where we have been before? I don't think so. Because the world has discovered that they need to diversify. They need also, I mean, even if the war ends, there needs to be built a certain trust. And again, in, for example, Russia on their supply or whatever. I mean, what we have seen is that this is not trustful, even with the supply that they have granted and which they have said we will do. I mean, I was recently in our factory in Mülheim. There stands the famous turbine that they are not using, which they say they can't use, but it's ready there. They can take it. I have physically seen it. It's sealed there. You can't move it. They have the papers. They just need to say we take it, but they don't take it. So, but they say there is no permission or whatever. There's everything. They just need to take it. So it's strange what you see. So you need to build trust in such a partner again. You need reliability is key. Price is one thing, but reliability, that is what the world discovered, plays also a huge role. So I see we will see also the energy prices might most likely come not back to the level that they have been before. But that also is important that the world community and the humans see that there is a certain price tag when we do this energy transition. And maybe we use then the surplus of money that we have potentially, hopefully again in the future, also to make this energy transition faster happening and move forward into going into a fully renewable world over the next decades. So that is something that I see on the Russian thing. Regarding the technology pieces, there is a lot of things that we are developing in the generation side in terms of efficiency, and when you develop a more efficient gas turbine, there's hundreds of millions of investment that you are doing there. We are launching a new gas turbine soon. You will see then what it means in terms of efficiency enhancement, but also what it means in terms of investment, because it's massive to do that. But it also the savings when you look over the time over the plant operation are huge at that time in CO2, but also in cost to generate electricity. Of course, we have touched that piece also when you go to grid technologies. We are developing new technologies to stabilize renewable grids. I talked about the flying wheel, so that you have spinning masses that are stabilizing the grid in voltage, in frequency. But we have also technologies that are doing that on an electronic base here, just introduced at the SICRE in France, where we introduced the ARES technology, helping these very diversified grids to stabilize them. So we are working on enhancing the compression technologies, efficiency in compression, because if you want to build pipelines to transport hydrogen, if you want to transport other gases over, you need efficiency there. So there is a lot of big technology pieces that we are doing there. And then, of course, when you come to the more controlled side of plants, how do you deal with the waste? energy that is generated in plants. I mentioned heat pumps, but there's also enhanced DCS systems, enhanced technologies on the digital side that we are doing. So there is a whole bunch of things, and we can have a presentation on that, and there's a lot of things, and you should come to us, and then we sit together. So there is a lot of stuff that is happening, and it depends on, you need to focus on certain areas and say, this is my plant is a food plant, and here I do this, and this is different than when you go into a cement plant or whatever.
Three disruptive technologies, or relatively disruptive technologies, obviously. First is small modular nuclear reactors. It would be great if we can get this off the ground. Second is nuclear fusion. I know it's been the technology that's about to happen in the next 20 years for the last 50 years. So, but if we could make that happen, that would be amazing. And thirdly, I read an article recently, Cambridge University Science Park. They have containers with a technology inside them. It's very black box. They're shipping them actually here to the UAE. It takes methane, so CH4, as an input, and its output is hydrogen and native carbon, so carbon black.
Wow. So,
I mean, if this is scalable, this is amazing, because of course carbon we need for carbon fiber, for windmill, wind turbine blades, and so on and so forth, and of course has huge global applications, replacement of steel. So if that can be scaled, I think that's a really exciting opportunity.
Yeah, we invested also in a company that's doing fusion technology. So maybe it's something for the next decade that we see that happening. I think there's also, again, the politics or the politics amongst companies plays a role. What technology do we let evolve? Maybe when I became an engineer, we were talking already fusion technology.
Yes.
And everybody said that's a solution. And I think it's a technological problem, but it's also a problem. Does the industry want to have this fusion technology coming up? Because it will solve our problem if it works. Then hydrocarbon, renewable, everything is dead because that's in the plant.
I'm an early stage investor in impact startups, social environmental impact startups. The topic of climate resilience and mitigation, or maybe carbon sequestration technologies, I don't know. What do you think that really is the urgency here, apart from all the transitionary technologies that are being deployed right now that we really need to focus on?
But definitely also carbon sequestration is a technology piece that you need to put into the equation. So to rule that out would be not the right thing to do. And here, especially in the UAE, that is a big thing that is ongoing. And so from that side, I agree with you. That's a technology piece that also needs to be looked on and that needs to be put into the equation in this energy transition. So absolutely.
It makes absolute. I'm a geologist, so you're talking to my interest space. Obviously, carbon capture, utilization, storage, utilization where it's applicable, is got to be a big part of the decarbonization process going forwards. Technically, no problems. We've taken these hydrocarbons out of the ground. They've been there for millions of years, in some cases for 10 or hundreds of millions of years. We know that CH4 is actually a much smaller molecule than CO2, which is a much bigger molecule. So in terms of putting the CO2 back in the ground, there are no technical issues. The problem and the challenge at the moment, of course, is cost. So extracting those CO2 streams. So there has to be some kind of system in place, coming back to the question earlier about role of government, to incentivize the development of this technology to drive down costs. So that is absolutely a key part of the energy future, is decarbonizing and sequestrating. I think another part that is not discussed enough is geoengineering. We're talking and focusing and concentrating, as rightly we should, on let's not emit CO2 in the first place. But I think we are running out of time. And I think that although a lot of eco purists think that this is an escape route and fudging the difficult questions, I think we need to start thinking now about Plan B. And I think Plan B has got to be about how do you geoengineer a solution to allow us to arrive at 1.5 degrees centigrade? And there are a number of different ways and means that you can do that. Thank you, everybody. I mean, I think you will agree with me. This was an amazing discussion. Dietmar, that was absolutely riveting.
Thank you to you. Thank you to you.
It was informative. You know, we discussed a whole range of topics and things related to the energy transition and the future of our planet. Thank you for coming and joining us today, and please join me in thanking Dietmar.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.